A near-death experience as a child leads to a lifelong interest in the paranormal. All this and more on the Radiate Wellness Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christi Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate?
Welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast, where today we radiate perseverance with my new dear friend, Kieran Stanislav Mace, otherwise known as Stan, my friend Stan. Now, Stan has had a very compelling story. He had a near-death experience, and that set him up for a lifelong interest in the paranormal. In fact, Stan is the author of the new book, Paranormal Perspectives, Paranormality, Normalizing the Paranormal. And he's also the host of the podcast, Paranormal Perspectives. I have been a guest on that show. In fact, that's really where we met and where we hit it off as just new fast friends. I hope you will enjoy this episode. Stan is also an artist, and there are some links in the show notes to take you to his art. But before we get too much further, I do have my usual asks that I would love to make of you, my beautiful, beautiful, good-looking, talented, charming, and amazing audience. If you're listening now, just if you would take a moment and look at whatever app you are listening on. Maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Take a look at that app and see what you can do to subscribe, like, or follow. And that way you'll get notified the next time that we have an episode coming out, just like this one. And then also, if you would tell your friends, we need more listeners. Why not? Because when we have more listeners, then there are more great suggestions for guests. I get suggestions for guests all the time. And honestly, some of them I turn down because I just don't think they would resonate with you. Hopefully this one does. And maybe you've got suggestions for someone you'd like to hear. I'm all ears. Please get in touch. But also, if you would, please, this podcast is free for you to listen to, but it's not free for me. In fact, I pay out of my pocket to produce this. I have an editor. She's wonderful. Her name is Rochelle. She's lovely. And then hosting costs money as well. So, and it all comes out of my pocket. So if you are in a position to do so, maybe chip in a couple bucks and chip into the podcast. And that would really help tremendously. All right. Enough of me yammering. On with the show. Hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to Kieran Stanislav Mace, who is the host of the Paranormal Perspectives Podcast and the new author of Paranormality, Normalizing the Paranormal, part of the Paranormal Perspectives heavy alliteration series of books. Welcome, Stan. Yeah, you go by Stan, I know.
That's right. Yeah. Hi, Christy. Thanks for having me here. Hello, everybody.
We are radiating perseverance because you, like me, grew up sensing things and knowing things and perceiving things, grew up in this way that was different than everybody else. And it's left a mark on you, I think.
Oh, yes, definitely. I experienced a major accident when I was about 5 years old, and seemingly overnight, I seemed to kind of come back experiencing this other side of life.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit what happened?
I don't want to start this story off on a bad note, but it does have a happy ending, I do believe. So I grew up in Oxford and part of this lovely city, a lovely place to be. But unfortunately, I was on the way to visit my Sardinian grandmother, who also lived in Oxford, crossing a road. And this vehicle shot across the road through a red light and straight into me as I was crossing the road with my mother. Mm-hmm. And without going into too much detail there, I was in quite a bad way. And I was rushed over to the John Radcliffe Hospital, which is quite a well-known hospital in Oxford. And doctors there are amazing. I really do owe them my life. I really do. But yeah, I went through a number of emergency surgeries, and I'm not sure at what point, which surgery it was, but I found myself outside of my body. And previously, I knew that I couldn't move my legs. Both legs were broken, both my arms were, and et cetera, et cetera. And I knew that I physically couldn't move it. In the pain, I'll never forget. It was excruciating. But suddenly, I was okay. I found that I was in the hallway of this at the time I seen was a hospital. And yeah, I was looking around. I walked down the corridor. I looked into the different patient rooms. I saw the little children in there because this was a pediatric ward. And I was trying to wave to get their attention, and they wouldn't see me. They didn't pay any attention at all. And nurses and the doctors were walking by. And I remember specifically tugging at the skirt of one of the nurses trying to get their attention. Of course, I was a little boy then, so I was trying to reach up. And nobody registered with me. So I continued to walk and saw the different rooms. And I saw some kids in a pretty bad way as well. And these are all images in my mind that have never left me. And I walked, still couldn't understand why I was walking and why I was suddenly okay. I couldn't feel the pain then, but just continued, didn't question too much. And I remember everything being hyper-focused. It's like I could see colours that I haven't seen in this life, really. Like everything was very different, like still physical, like the way I see you now and the way I am in reality now. But it felt like this odd dream. And I remember that feeling of just, I don't know, just being without a body, I suppose. But I made my way to the end of this corridor, and this is where this thing happened that changed my life, really. I entered this storage room, and I remember it having lots of holes on the wall. And I think it may have been a morgue. Sorry to be a bit morbid, really, though, but I think it was near the holes where you put bodies in. I don't know how I found myself in there, but I somehow managed to walk through multiple walls. I don't know, and there was a very thick door at the entrance of the place. And part of it did look like a bit of a storage room, just things left around, like nothing really conspicuous, really. But I just felt this most overwhelming feeling like there was an entity in there that was so vast. It's almost as if it was like looking at a planet, really, like something so vast you can barely comprehend it. Yet I couldn't see it. It's like I could see it, but I couldn't see it. Like there's this weird kind of paradox happening, and that's when it happened. And this thing, I don't know what it was. It was almost indifferent to my existence, really. It was so powerful, and it took me on this journey. And I don't know where I was transported to, but I was thrown around the universe. It feels I could see stars and planets and buildings, and I don't know what it was, but it was happening at ultra fast speed. Like imagine like having like a massive internet download like happening all at once, or thinking about the Matrix, Neo, when he downloads all of this information, when he says, I know Kung Fu kind of thing. I don't know Kung Fu, by the way. And as time went by, the download got more and more and more. And it was like I was being burnt out. It was just so much. And towards the end of this experience, I remember flying through the sky and landing on this walkway. And I landed as if I was flying from the sky and saw these teenagers with hoodies on there. And they turned around as if to look at me, just to see as if there was something was there. I could see all the details and in absolutes. I could just see everything basically, like the cracks, the breakages and the meshwork of the bridge, and everything is like I knew it through and through. And this was a bridge that was over water. It was a really strange place. Like there was a stairway going down over the top of this big lake. And it's a very specific place I remember being. And at that point, I was just like screaming for my life. It's like I was trying to scream, but I couldn't. And I was screaming for my mum. And like I say, she's always been my hero. And the moment I started to call out for her, I was thrown back into my body. And I think it was a few days later where I began to kind of be more compos mentis, more conscious of what's going on, as the medication was kind of reduced a little bit so I could be a bit more alert. And as I came to, I saw that my legs were in casts. I had metal bars through my legs. My legs were suspended up. Like I was pretty much a mummy, if the best way I could describe it, really. I was in so many bandages and all sorts. And I assign that experience to a dream because it's a bit easier to comprehend it when you're presented with that new information. And this is when the dream becomes reality. So a few weeks later, I was feeling a bit better and a bit less pain. And the nurses, bless them, like they did everything to help me. And this lady came to me and said, look, would you like to go on a bit of a ride, go on a stroll to maybe see a different perspective, maybe see a different room in the wards? And she picked me up and put me in the wheelchair. And that maneuver in itself would be quite tricky, obviously with your legs binded and everything there. But she managed to just about balance me in there. But I was just happy as anything to just get out of that bed finally. And she took me down the corridor. And the more I went further down into this space, the more I realized I knew that room. I know that kid. I know that doctor. I know that discarded box on the floor. I know that crack on the wall. I know that sticker on the door. And I began to tell her, can you turn left here? Can you turn right? And I was telling her where to go. But this was the first time in my physical body that I'd been there. And that just doesn't make sense to me. And that's when it came to the end of the corridor. She couldn't take me into the morgue, but we managed to get to a place where she was not too far away from it. I could see it through the window, this opening. Of course, there's security there, big doors and all that. You can enter. I could see through the window the room with the holes in, the room with the discarded boxes and the doctor's coat and all the little details. And I just freaked out. I mean, this is just a 5-year-old kid. And that's a lot to put on a kid, let alone the physical pain that I was going through and everything. And that completely conflicted with my religious upbringing. because I was told that that couldn't happen. But I still had to go to Sunday school and everything for many years later to subscribe to that. And I'm all for religion as well. Like, it does do a lot of good for people out there. I had to live with this knowing that you say one thing and I do this other thing. Basically, I've experienced this other thing. And one last thing to this initial start, a few years later, when I was physically better, walking around, I was just going out with my friend, and we used to go to this place called Hinksey Pools in Oxford. It's a big, lovely outdoor swimming pool, kind of thing all kids go to around their early ages. I was walking through this walkway to the pools. His mum used to drop me off a bit further back to avoid all the traffic there. So we had to kind of walk this specific path through the countryside. And it's this path the locals call the Devil's Backbone in Oxford, if anyone knows the area near Lake Street. So we used to walk that way. And at that point, it was the first time going there because my friend thought, okay, it's a shortcut. I'll take you down there, see if we can get there on time. And as I walked along, I had to go up these steps that went over this train bridge. And on the other side, there's some steps that went down. And the steps went down, went over this humongous lake. And over the lake was this bridge. And it was the exact thing I saw an out-of-body experience many years before. And at that point, I just shut down. My poor friend just saw me just freeze and start shaking, like he didn't understand what was going on, and nor did I really. But I just froze because my whole reality just broke apart once again. And that's the start of Paranormality, really. So the book is my discovery that there's more behind the veil of life, really. And also, there's more to be excited about life as well, that this isn't something to be afraid of. This is a discovery that consciousness may not be localized in the body and may be transmitted from somewhere else. Who knows what it might be at this point. But and this experience led me into many years of dealing with the entity that I met at the hospital. So yeah, back over to you, Christi. I imagine you might want a break.
It sounds, Stan, like you had at least an out-of-body experience, if not a near-death experience. What do you think it was?
Technically, both are one and the same, because for many standards is the leaving of the body and the body dying.
Yeah.
My body was dying, and I did leave my body. So I'm not sure how you would classify that, Christi, but all I could say is I felt like I was near death. I felt like, I don't know whether I met death itself, and I would love to know what this entity is, though, but I met something that was old and ageless, and I felt like I was at the edge of time, really. Like, imagine there being a threshold, really, that is almost a gateway to eternity, really, and to comprehend the infinite in itself for a mere human being, really, is quite overwhelming. And I was too scared to talk about this for many years, really. It's taken me until my late 30s to start writing this book because I was scared about being judged, quite frankly.
Right, because you grew up Catholic, right?
Yeah, I was Catholic, and I mean, this is nothing against Catholics. I do love a lot of that religion, but it's just being sat there in church, watching these lovely people sing these beautiful hymns, praising somebody and following these rules, which is all well and good. But knowing that somebody have this burden of knowledge that you wouldn't dare share with someone because you don't want to break their happiness. But you feel so sad inside because you can't share it because you're worried about being judged. You can't share it because, like I said, you don't want to break their happiness. But you have this knowing, once you cross the threshold, you need to know more. And I've had this need to know for such a long time, but I can never forget this entity, and it pursued me. And that's the thing, Christi. During the end of my time at the hospital, I think I do assign this to being the same entity. I remember specifically this hyper vivid memory. Actually, it was about 2 days before I left the hospital. I looked towards the end of my bed, and at the end of it, I find it quite hard to talk about this, bear with me. There's this creature with dark skin, quite gnarly, almost like gnarled wood, the best way to describe it. Not quite burnt though, but as if it's grown that way. And it had these bright white eyes. And I remember it specifically leering over my bed, as in like its head just popping over the top of where my feet were. And these long, thin fingers reaching over the end. Not trying to grab me, but it was there just watching me. And I remember not being able to move my body. Like, I was looking at it, I was trying to scream for the nurses. And sorry, excuse me, this was the middle of the night, by the way, as well. So the nurses were at their station, the other kids were asleep in the ward. And for some time after, I saw this thing, and it followed me home into my childhood home, and was part of a number of poltergeist-like events for many years, really. And I do attribute it to this entity. And would you like me to go into more detail? Is that okay too?
Yes, please.
So I moved to a new house about a couple of years after, the whole hospital experience happened, and we moved into this property. It's like a 1940s build property. It was actually built for the soldiers at the end of the Second World War. So it's quite a relatively big property. And at the time, my mum was a single parent, just divorced my dad. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of emotional things going on there. So me as a kid, I almost blame myself for the divorce because of the accident. I know it's not my fault now anyway, but back then when you're a kid, like that does happen. But it was definitely for the best. And that's another story for another day. Really, my mum did definitely save me and my sister. During this time, just to consider the fact that a lot was going on then. Of course, the divorce was happening. I had PTSD from my accident. It took many years for that to go away. So I had night terrors, like finding me screaming in the daytime, reliving, sorry for the detail, but reliving the underneath of the car and all these different things.
Right.
And these things never leave a kid. We experienced some strange activity in this house. We'd hear whistling. So sometimes it started with us hearing whistling in the garden at first. And over time, it began to enter the house. And at one point I thought, okay, maybe it's me and my sister always have a terrible sense of humor. We're always messing with each other. That's how we survive, really. And I said to her, like, are you whistling? Like, you secretly whistling somewhere in the house? And she says, no, I literally can't whistle anyway. And I said, okay, we'll prove it then. And she did prove it, which was hilarious. But over time, like, we kept hearing this whistling and it got closer and closer to where our ears were. It's like it was happening next to us. Like, it's a very high pitched whistle and it echoed across the room.
Now, I have to say, this is going to sound weird, but did it sound like a man or a woman?
Oh, good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
It always felt like a male energy in the house. But then again, that might be my influence there, because of course I'm a male, so maybe I'm assuming it's male. I don't know whether it sounded male or female, but either way, it sounded quite loud. It was loud and it was confident. Does that make sense? So I don't know which you would attribute it to.
Yes, affirmative whistling.
Affirmative whistling, yes. It was a confident whistle. Yeah, so it got to the point where me and my sister heard it. And then eventually, when our friends would come over, we had sort of 7 or 8 friends that would come to our house sometimes. They heard it too. And we started to be known as the Whistling House in the community. And we couldn't explain it really. Over time, things began to kind of escalate somewhat. One particular instance, it was one night, I remember it's the early hours of the morning. Just trying to recall the memory now. So it's the early hours of the morning. At the time I was at secondary school, where I heard a party. And I was quite annoyed thinking, well, who's having a party at this hour of the night? I needed sleep really, really. I was tired. So I opened the window to try and guess where the noise was coming from. And I couldn't really identify it, like it wasn't a neighbour. And then it got louder and louder. And it seemed to emanate from the very centre of my room. And I could hear people laughing. I could hear glasses clinking. I could hear just, I don't know, like liquid being poured and people eating. And it was actually quite a happy sound. But of course, for the first time, it was frightening. I hid under my covers. I couldn't explain it. I did try to replicate it the next day, just trying to think, okay, well, is it coming from a vent nearby? Does someone simply have a TV on? But the thing is, it kept happening over and over and over again. And it was almost consistently. So I'd say about 5 of the 7 days a week. And this lasted for a good 2-3 years. And eventually it was a comfort to me. I just think, okay, well, I can't really sleep until I could hear these noises. So I was waiting for the party to play, and then I fell asleep around 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm quite a late night owl. The weirdest thing was, spoke to my sister eventually about this weird occurrence. Like, so we began to talk more about these strange occurrences. She could hear it too. My mum, who's living in the same house, she couldn't hear it. But then again, she'll sleep through an earthquake. There's no surprise about that. But my sister, she said, actually, it sounds like it's coming from my room too. So there was one night where I went over to her room to see if I could hear, and I thought, I can hear it here too. So, I mean, I have considered the fact that, okay, well, brickwork can sometimes record sound, visions and stuff like that. Sometimes it can replay. I know that's the thing, a resonance.
Right, the stone tape theory.
Stone tape, yes. I love that name, stone tape. It does what it says on the tin.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like, just more started happening. Objects would move. I remember one particular night I was sat in front of the tea table, like, we had this bowl full of sweets, or candies, as you say, and these like jelly sweety things. We were quite healthy, by the way. I have to say, we did have some fruit in there somewhere, but yeah, I have to say how unhealthy, always have a good diet. I sat in front of this table watching TV, and this was about 9 o'clock in the evening. So my leg could have kicked this table to move it, by the way. That's one thing to consider. But I remember my legs were down. It was after I had quite a bad day at school as well. I noticed that because I experienced a lot of bullying at the time. So I wonder if this might be an emotional resonance too that may amplify these events.
Yeah, like often.
Yeah, I sat there after a really hard day, a really bad day, and I thought, okay, I'm just glad the day's over, just going to relax and watch some TV. And this big metal bowl, out of nowhere, it jumped off the table about 1 or 2 centimeters, like just enough. And it's quite a heavy bowl as well. Like I say, it's metal, it's thick, full of sweets. And as it jumped off, the sweets exploded, shot across the room. A couple hit me in the face, and it actually did quite hurt, I admit. And that scared me. I thought, okay, now it's beginning to get a bit more aggressive, whatever it was. And I eventually returned back to the room to try and explain, okay, well, could it be thermodynamics? So say if the bowl sat in the sun during the day, it could have maybe reset in position as it cooled, as a situation. I could have maybe unknowingly kicked the table and maybe misremembered it. But for me to kick the table, it's a big old table and it's going to hurt. So that's one thing that I want to tell me that, but things kept escalating, and I'll see the dark creature that I saw in the hospital in my bedroom some evenings. So this thing would be there in the corner. It would smell of smoke, not quite cigarette smoke, maybe cigar sometimes. And me and my sister would have strange dreams. And it's one in particular, which we discussed on our episode a few days ago, was the whole carpet or rug dream, whatever word you used to describe it, where for many years I had the same scary dream. And the idea is I'm stood in this infinite void, and at the center of it is this rug just under some light. So just enough focus to pull me in position, and something says to me, okay, it's your job, you must fold this carpet in half. And not really questioning the ridiculousness or the need to do that. I just did it anyway, as if I had no choice but to do it. And I folded this rug in half, and I could see it in this dream. It's quite ornate. It's like red and yellows and some greys in there, very nicely weaved. It's quite beautiful looking, really. But I folded it and folded it again. And as I folded, I found that it wasn't halving. It just kept going on and on and on. It just never stopped. And in this dream, it gets more frantic and frantic as I realize, like, it's almost like you're trying to comprehend the infinite. And it's the same feeling that I had when I encountered the entity back in the hospital. And this overwhelming feeling like, help me, I can't get out. I'm here forever. I can't escape. And then eventually I wake up in the night, like in a cold sweat, just shivering, like adrenalized, really. And that may be part of my PTSD. And that's something to consider too. But the weird thing is, like, again, this happened for years. I didn't want to tell anyone about it because I had a single mum. I didn't want to put any more pressure on her than she already had, bless her. So eventually, like, it got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. Like, I'd had it for years. It's too much. And I called my sister and said, look, I know we like to have a joke about things, but can I tell you something that's really been affecting me? And I hope you understand, because, you know, you heard the whistling in the house and you heard the music. I want to tell you this thing. So I told her the story about the dream, the very specific details of this dream. And she went quiet on the other end of the phone. And I said, what's up? And she said a few expletives, which I can't say here, but as you'd imagine. And she said, I can't believe it. I've had that exact same dream for years. So I've been dreaming about the same rug or carpet, so I don't know what you call it though. And we both froze. And again, it was like that moment where I walked onto that walkway, realizing that I saw that in the so-called dream. We had the same actual connected dream. And we try to kind of reverse engineer that thought process really and go, okay, did that stem from an event? Well, I went through a tremendously traumatic event. My sister is younger than myself, so she would have known a bit of what's happened though, but she was so young that she wouldn't be able to remember much of that. So I don't suspect she's had a lot of trauma though, but I wonder if siblings can sometimes carry trauma. And that might be her way psychically of trying to help me, maybe sharing the burden, because the moment that I told her that and we both realized that, we both never had the dream ever again. It just completely stopped dead. And we don't have an explanation for it to this day. And like I say, I feel from that was the same as the entity that I met. So I do believe it's linked to it. I don't know what it was trying to teach me.
So many questions. It's crazy. It sounds like you kind of got a creepy feeling from it at the time.
Yes.
And then any lingering kind of creepy feelings or feelings of dread or anything like that?
Oh, totally. Like, for years, I had this feeling of, the best way to describe it is like the car's always coming and the car's always going to be there around the corner waiting for you, even though I know literally that's not true. It's that feeling of forever being in fright and horror. And my friends tried so hard when I was a kid to try and break through this shock. And even my family couldn't understand. It's not their fault really though, but they just saw me as the weird kid really. Like, he likes to sit away and be kept away from people. And yes, I was shy, but I was shy because I didn't want to encounter more of these horrible things. I wanted it just a time just to be a kid. So unfortunately, I didn't really have much of a childhood really. Like, there were some parts of it that were really happy and began to break me through, but when you see the other side and go through an experience like that, you forget how to be a kid. You're no longer a kid immediately. You may be a kid in the body, but your mind evolves so quickly. And this is part of the positive change for all this as well. I'm sorry that I have to give you like the dark side of it though, but the dark side is the beginning. But out of this experience, I was a changed person. So my mind worked very differently. I didn't apparently have any brain damage. I know I have a lot of physical issues with my legs, but thankfully I can walk anyway. I survived and that's good enough for me. But my brain worked differently. So I went from being a non-creative, but still happy kid before the accident to being a hyper-creative, but very frightened kid. And I seemingly overnight just knew how to draw. And it's not acquired savant syndrome anyway. I don't think it's like that though, but I just knew how to draw. Because during my time at the hospital, I said to my mum, okay, get me a pen and paper now. I need to draw. And I think I only had like a hand free, like everything else was all tied up. And so I think I had to balance a piece of paper and some pens on me so I could sort of doodle away. I just could draw very well from an early age. And that's what's powered me through my career, really. Like, yes, I fought this horrible entity for many years and I've had to deal with all the bullies that didn't quite understand what I went through because there's something weird about me that freaked people out because I could speak about them. I could speak through them, if that makes sense. I could draw out something from them. So if they have something good to come out, I'm going to amplify that. If they have something bad to come out, it's going to come out anyway. And that's what it also links into this whole I hate to say kind of mediumistic side of things. So I don't like to say that I'm a medium, not because I'm against being a medium, because almost, again, I still have that programming of when I was younger that mediums are not real, or they could be maybe take advantage of people who are in vulnerable situations, all this stereotype. But when I actually realized I was one all along, I began to think, actually, I'm not one of those horrible people. I try to understand what I've got, and it has helped me to help other people at many stages of their life as well. Sometimes it would be just knowing exactly the right words to say at exactly the right time. And a couple of times it's really freaked people out and they've had to leave the room that I've said something that I couldn't have known. But these words just managed to just drop in my head. And it's weird. I don't know how it works, but it does. But through my artwork, it's helped me to heal and try to comprehend the vastness of this experience that I've had. So for years, I've been a psychedelic artist, and psychedelic seems to be a direct representation of the feelings that I felt during that time and the feelings that I feel when I connect to these entities and these energies. And some of these energies are not very nice. A lot of these energies are wonderful, happy, lovely things as well. Like, I do have my guide to thank for me surviving a lot of these experiences, though, because my guide has been nudging me. It's given me a few tellings off here and there when I've headed in the wrong direction, and also for doubting myself, really. So, but yeah, I mean, the positive side of the story is it changed me. It made me a better, stronger person. It made me more empathetic. It made me more open to the world and to be less afraid of the unknown. And it's only taken me until when I was nearly 40 really to start writing this book, Paranormality. And I do have to say, for anyone listening here, we do kick this entities behind at some point. We do give it a good telling for, because thankfully, my friend, towards the end of me staying at this childhood home, I made a really good friend. She was a friend of my mother's at the time, and I met her for the first time, and she gave me the weirdest look. I don't know whether it was like a death stare or something, but she gave me the strangest look, and she took me to one side and said to me, look, you're going to think I'm crazy right now, but there's something going on with you, and we need to deal with it pretty quickly. And that followed a major event towards the end, where at the end of a school day, again, after bullying, all that, I came to my bedroom door and had the most horrible feeling, like gravity dropped and I was being sucked down. And usually when these big events happen, I can feel it happening. But at the time, I didn't know what that meant. And I opened my bedroom door and it was nighttime, even though it was the middle of the day. It's like everything went dark and the room itself was twisting and contorting into one particular corner of the room. And I felt it was that entity again, but this time it had somehow entered reality. And maybe it could have been a hallucination from my part because there wasn't a secondary witness, though, so I'll fully accept that interpretation. But either way, there was something so frighteningly powerful then. And it almost like I began to realize then it had been feeding off of my misery and my trauma for many, many years. And I had this feeling like there's something like manipulating the people that are around me too as well. I felt like sometimes when I'd come into contact with strangers, they would just start shouting and screaming sometimes. And I remember specifically my maths teacher, I'm terrible at maths, but speaking to my maths teacher, I said, look, I don't understand this equation. Can you explain to me some more about this? I need more clarity. And I remember his eyes looking very strange, like he just started shouting at me. I don't know what he started saying, and slamming his office chair on the floor. And I thought, okay, bit of an overreaction there. So that's just me giving you an example, like over the years, like this thing fed into these different events happening. And like I say, my friend who identified this thing, she said, okay, we're going to deal with this thing now. She says, please just trust me. Okay, it's going to be okay. And I didn't believe her at the time, no disrespect to her, and then she began to talk to me and she told me things about me that even my mum doesn't know about. And I'm hoping that she never does find out about, because you're never too old to get grounded by your mum. But I'll keep that secret for now. Nothing illegal, don't worry. But yeah, so she told me the most secret things that not even my mum knows about. Nobody knows about it but myself. I haven't whispered to a single soul, not even my sister. And to have a stranger say that to you is just, I was actually trembling at the time. I was shaking because something was happening. And it concluded in, she had this almighty fight with this entity. Just to give you the top line idea of this thing, it was how it was shouting and hissing, swearing at her, throwing things across the room. But the weirdest thing is, she fought this thing. She eventually was able to drive this thing away and separate me from this thing. I'll never forget this feeling that, I don't know, it's almost like for the first time I felt like it was scared. And I don't think it had ever experienced fear in its existence. And I don't believe it was ever human, whatever it was. But she eventually separated me from this thing. And I remember her specifically describing it. And I've never told her how it looks. And this description that she gave of it exactly matched the thing that I saw at the hospital, that I'd seen in my room all those years. This dark creature with gnarled flesh, dark flesh, with white glowing eyes. I'm just thinking about that scene from Ghostbusters 2, if you guys know, but kind of like that, really. For the first time in my life, I began to separate from this thing. I began to feel like what it feels like to be a normal person. I actually began to feel happy. I started to make more friends after that event. And it's taken me years and years and years to get through trauma, to really fully kind of work through all of that mess. But now I'm feeling a lot better. And it did develop into complex PTSD as well, which is another thing that's quite hard to overcome. But I've been through quite a lot from a young age. I've had to deal with some quite tremendously awful people over the years. And that's just a top line view of some of the events from the book. But the book is really just a message for those out there, whether you're a skeptical person, whether you're a full believer, whether you're an experiencer, because I do believe there are three things, not just believers and skeptics. There are experiencers that don't really have a choice whether to believe or not. They're just thrown into it, though, such as myself. There's a book out there to just consider that these things do happen and it's okay to experience these things. You shouldn't be ashamed and it's not your fault. And I hope it inspires other people to question. And I'll stop talking now.
So why do you think these things were happening to you? What do you think it is about you that allowed these things to come through?
My theory at the moment is I must have been born with something switched on, because I need to share with you the photos actually for it to make sense, because before the accident happened, some interesting things occurred. So basically, I was due to start my primary school then. So my mum very proudly bought me my first school uniform, which took some photos of me in my original home, and it's all very happy and lovely. But this was back in the days where we didn't have digital cameras, so they had to be developed. And that does imply that obviously there's a process where things can go wrong during the development process. So the pictures we received back a few days later had lightning across them, and that's the best thing I can describe. I thought at first it was like drips of the developer and the seal that you used to develop photos, but I'll send you a copy for you to make your own opinions though. But it looks like pure energy, like lightning shooting across, and they're across my legs, across my arms that I broke, like pretty much almost everywhere that I had broken a few days later were in that photo. I do believe that I think I was born with something, but I think it had only been fully activated when that accident happened. So, I mean, I personally would prefer that accident to not happen. I would like to say in some way or form, but then again, if that had not happened, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And which leads me on to the Paranormal Perspectives podcast. Like, I'm owning that story now. I'm getting other people to tell their stories and just don't be afraid of it, to talk about the paranormal. There's a lot more to learn about life.
So your Paranormal Perspectives podcast. Oh my gosh, the alliteration. I love it.
I know. I can barely say the title of my own podcast. Like, it's really tricky.
The Paranormal Perspectives podcast. It's kind of like the Real Life Angel Encounters podcast, my other podcast of real people sharing their paranormal perspectives, right? So why did you start the podcast? Why did you feel like it was necessary to take your story and put it onto the platform of podcasts?
It's kind of a two-way thing. Partly it's confidence building, because much of my life I've had issues with speech. However, I was changed. I don't know what it was. Information comes through my head really, really quickly. So I speak so fast. And when you have an Oxford accent, Oxford's very slow and methodical. It doesn't compute when you speak Oxford and have all this information. It just doesn't work. So it comes through very unclear. So part of it was me going, okay, I'm going to now take ownership of this and overcome my fear of speaking and being judged for the way that I sound. And I'm not perfect, but I'm getting there now. And the other part of it, through getting that confidence, that allowed me to open the door for me to overcome my own experiences. And through doing that, invite other people to overcome their experiences. So the people that I've spoken to are people that go hunting for the paranormal, as in, like, they could be ghost hunters, they could be mediums that put themselves in situations where they encounter these things. And that's okay. But there are some people that are thrust into it unwantingly. They're reluctant to have had those experiences kind of self, really. There are people out there that are just so scared to talk about these things, and it could be through societal reputation, like judgment of family, your church, your workplace, and so on. And it's a hard thing for you to carry in your heart. Like, you don't feel fully free when you've seen something that it doesn't compute. It's like you've encountered a reality glitch in a way, but you need to let it out. Through people doing this, it's helped them to heal and to understand their experiences. But to me, I'm hoping it will form a library of the paranormal over time, where people can look back over it over the years and see that as a place to learn about it. So again, whether you're skeptical, I mean, it's okay to be skeptical. It's completely reasonable to ask questions, to doubt certain things if you haven't seen it yourself. I mean, that's perfectly okay. Here's a library for you to think about. Here are a few examples. And the great thing about this is it's for people of all walks of life, really. So can't believe I've had a Hollywood actor on there, like John Shuzang, mispronouncing his name terribly, but it's a good friend of mine. But it shows people who are in acting experience the most bizarre things. I've had office workers who've experienced things. I've had multiple mediums on there, of course, unsurprisingly, having experienced things. I've had a genealogist on there. I've had a researcher. I forget what kind of a researcher he was, so you'll have to correct me after, but I've had nursery workers. I've had a graphic designer like myself, really. I've even had my sister on there at one point, where we shared our particular dream story. It's a great library to represent a range of humanity from all different kinds of backgrounds, telling their own experiences. And the people on there, they're not there to be judged or to be told what's right or wrong. It's simply an opportunity for you to tell your truth and be unafraid. It's setting an example, really, though. So those people, I'm so grateful for them being a part of it. And they've helped me to heal too, as well. So, like, I don't think they realize just yet how much they've helped me. It's a beautiful thing, really.
I think when we talk about it, we know that we're not alone in the things that we've been experiencing, especially how we grew up. I mean, when it's awfully lonely being a child.
It is.
And experiencing these things, knowing them. I mean, that was me too. And it was extremely lonely. And you're the weird kid and you're bullied, you're made fun of, and it's just not fun. But when we talk about these experiences with others, we realize that we're really just not that alone in it. I love that. And then, yeah, that's what Paranormal Perspectives does, is lets us know that there are other people talking about this out there. Now, you wrote the book, Paranormality. Why did you choose to write the book?
The book itself is evidence of the paranormal, I believe, because I'm not a writer. Technically, I literally am now because I've released a book, or am releasing a book, but I'm not a writer. Like, by trade, I'm a graphic designer, so I work in images through the day. I love that job. I'm just not a writer, but everything came to a conclusion, almost like years and years of being through that experience. So I managed to get rid of this entity, had to deal with the effects of the accident and that entity for many years after. And when I finally was confident enough to tell that story, I'm not sure what happened, but it's almost like I remember like getting a message from my guide. Like, I woke up one morning and there's just the words in there, "It's time." I said, "Well, time for what?" That's a bit of a threatening kind of quote. And it said, no, it's time to write. I mean, okay, then that's good. I'm not going to die today, then that's good.
Oh.
So no, I jumped onto my word processor and I thought, okay, well, I'm not sure where to start with the story. And I just simply listed out all of the bizarre things that I've seen and then began to expand upon them. And I don't know what happened. I don't remember what my process was or how it came to be, but within the period of 2 weeks, I wrote about 120 pages worth of this story and had quite a few spelling mistakes because I was doing it frantically, but it was done, it was out there. And then I just spent some time obviously refining it. And I thought at the very least, okay, I've let this out now. This is my pain. This is like a lifetime's worth of pain. And I hope this will form a blueprint for other people who experience what I've experienced to overcome and grow beyond that. Because this is my point where I've almost signed off the headstone, really. Like, that's the chapter of that stage of my life. This is a new chapter now where I'm going to be happy, enjoy life, and smell the roses, so to speak.
And your podcast has been growing. I'm imagining your book as well. And now, your book is not yet out, is it?
It's not out until March next year, so it's a bit of a slow release, but it's part of this range of books that sit under the Paranormal Perspectives range, which is another weird coincidence because that's the same name of my podcast. When I applied for the book, I applied for it after I made my podcast, and they happen to be forming a range of books under that same name. So if that's not a sign, if anything, I don't know what would be. It'll be out March next year, and I'm just beginning to kind of tell people about it now. And I'm really happy that you're the first person I'm speaking to about this properly now. And I feel kind of honored to be here, really, because like, if I didn't do these things, I wouldn't be able to speak to lovely people like yourself. I've met so many kind-hearted people through this podcast. Like, I feel really quite privileged. And about a year ago, I was too scared to even dare to talk about it. Yet here I am right now talking to somebody on the other side of the ocean. An extremely personal story. And the book itself, it's not, well, you know me by now, Christi, like, I'm not quite conventional in terms of telling stories. I'll tell you something scary, then I'll throw in a joke here and there and a bit of random context, which eventually leads to a certain point. But the book itself is like a selection of really quite scary events to make you think, but it doesn't tell you what to think. And then I'll interject with some context around the events that lead up to that to just give you an indication, okay, well, certain things may have fed into those events. But I've also thrown in a couple of little personal funny stories in there too that happened around the time of those events. But I see them weirdly as being a spiritual event because it's just the way they happened was so bizarre. There's one particular story about a boy falling into his own bag on the way to school, but I don't want to spoil the ending to that. It's a really weird one.
His own bag?
So yeah, like I say, it's a little short story, and this thing happened. In a way, it's almost like an interlude in the book because it's in between two very, very big, quite intense stories though. So I kind of threw it in there. I mean, this thing actually happened, but I use that as more of a palate cleanser or like an interlude to brace you for the next round of scary story. But no, this is one story where I was watching this kid walk to school because I used to go to school, of course, every day with a big backpack full of my things. And it was at the top of this hill. It used to be you had to have a lot of endurance to make it up that hill every day. And I used to get so fed up walking up that hill. And one day, this kid that was smaller than me appeared out of nowhere. He must have been some new kid. He always used to be ahead of me. He always used to leave a couple of minutes ahead of me up the hill. So I used to follow him and just watch him. For some reason, I was just really fascinated by this kid because he was so small, but his bag was so big. And you could see he was really struggling, this poor little kid, bless him. I could see his little legs like just plodding along trying to make his way with this bag. But long story short, one day this amazing thing happened, and I'll never forget the image. He got to the very brow of this hill, and he was just covered in sweat. It was a hot summer's day, and like he was clearly struggling. And I wanted to kind of walk up to him and say, like, do you need some help? Are you okay? I was too nervous then. I was too shy. But he had like one last breath at the top of the hill, and he just fell backwards. And he somehow, I think his bag was so big, and he left it open. He fell backwards into his own bag. Like I could see like the top half of his torso just disappear into his own bag. I've always had this image of his two little legs like sticking out at the end. But weirdly, this happened in amongst the most intense paranormal activity. And that was my one moment of breath, a clear breath to just go, actually, maybe life isn't all about horror and scariness, so bless him. But he was okay in the end, I have to say. He did manage to find his way out of his own bag, but I've never seen anybody eaten by their own bag ever since, really. So, but humor also has helped me to survive these events. I've had to always find a funny way to see life, because life is fascinating. It is some of the most silly things happen, and it's always worth remembering that.
Yes. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out is that it just seems like your sister is also very wrapped up in this. Why do you think that is? What kind of bond do you have with your sister?
Oh, it's sibling protection. We've endured angry fathers, violent stepdads, bullies at school. We used to go to the same school, the rejection of the church, and is in the way the church judged our single parent family, because we were seen as impure, imperfect, because we didn't have a dad in our lives. So many things that we've been through together. We wouldn't have survived as well as we did without each other. So we spent a lot of time growing up trying to make each other laugh, doing the most silliest things to each other. There are things that I don't want to say on your podcast that we did to each other just to annoy each other and embarrass each other, which some of them I did leave in the book in there, just a couple though. But yeah, we were very silly, and it was our way of surviving, like I say. So me and my sister now, we still stay in contact. We both have our own family now, our own kids. We're both married, but there's nothing to stop us sending each other a really silly message out of nowhere with a silly story that we thought up. There's nothing stopping us doing that. So our connection is like, it's us helping each other to survive like quite unusual situations in life, really. But she's living a great life now, and I am now, thankfully. I still have a few things I need to fix, really. I'm just on the other edge of this, like, it's a wave of like essentially spending 35 years since that event happened now. So 35 years of living with PTSD, night terrors, panic attacks, anxiety, various forms of leg pains and aching bones. But an interesting consequence of the accident is it triggers hair growth. And I was known in my school for having the hairiest legs in school as well at a very early age. So imagine a 5-year-old kid with hairy legs. I mean, would you believe it though? But it is possible.
I've heard that show ghosts. I know that was done in
yes,
repeated in the United States, where the main character hits her head and then she's able to see the ghosts.
Yes.
I'm wondering.
It might be that. It might be that.
Physical trauma makes it so where you see the ghost. Yeah, she fell down the stairs, which I would think would be almost as bad as being hit by a car at an early age. But you were very lucky, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't think I was supposed to survive, because a lot of the warnings, thankfully, because the John Radcliffe Hospital, if anybody doesn't know, it's run by Oxford, I think, University, or I think it inducts Oxford University students. So they're people fresh out of university, highly educated, maybe not so well practiced though, but they're more open to new forms of treatment. So you often have a better chance of surviving being there, at least most of the time. So I think I have that to thank them for. But I did warn my mum at the time. He said, look, you're a little boy, you need to accept the fact that it may be that he has some brain damage. It's more likely that he won't be able to walk or have issues walking. And I do feel like a bit like Frankenstein's monster, because I'm walking now, I'm talking, my brain works fully, if not better than it did before. And the doctors, they couldn't explain how I survived in the way that I did. But I think they were just quite happy to see me alive at that point, really, because I had enough. And I thought, okay, that's enough for a 5-year-old kid to take, really. And I shouldn't be alive today. And I do 100% believe that I did die. I was at the threshold and crossing over at that point. And for whatever reason, this entity or something sent me back. And I don't know the reason just yet, but I'm beginning to see maybe why I was sent back. So to maybe make a few jokes on the way, but maybe more importantly, open people up to the fact that you can survive tremendously awful things and become a better person through them, a more powerful person through them.
And many of the people who have experienced these type of things, the near-death experience, will come back forever changed and feeling like they must tell everybody about the other side, which it took a few decades for that to catch up with you. But it sounds like that's what happened, is that you came out of it needing to tell people about that experience and what is possible.
Yeah, that is pretty much it. I'm always aware, I've experienced something, then a lot of people out there wouldn't have experienced it. So I can't tell people what to think and what to believe. But the things that I'm not a believer, and I'm a skeptic. I'm skeptical about things though, but I'm not a full-on skeptic either, because I have no choice to be either, only an experiencer now, because I have no other choice. I've seen what I've seen. So yes, I would like to say to people that there is more to life out there, that your consciousness doesn't sit within your body. I do believe you're part of, actually, I can't really say I do believe, can I? I say I do know that you're part of a greater whole, that your consciousness streams from somewhere else, who knows, from the cloud. They're essentially, we're all like walking radios, really, like we're receiving a transmission from somewhere. It seems to be that you can operate outside of your body and do your own thing and still be yourself. And through that experience, I have had a more of a positive side of mediumship too, because just to add one last thing, if that's okay, but it's just one beautiful thing that I remember are the sky doctors, I call them. And a few months after I came back from the hospital, where I just started secondary school, so I was able to physically walk about, not very well though, but I was kind of managing to get about on my own, and went to this school called Botany School. That's where I grew up. I was out with my friends doing my thing. And it was the start of this regular occurrence where I was still processing what happened during the accident. And I just seemed to know, okay, I need to leave my friends now. I'm out there on the grass, having fun at break time. I used to walk away, and there was this like ledge of grass where there's like a slight hill. I used to lie down automatically, just knowing what I needed to do, and just looked up at the sky. And during that time, I used to go into these trances where I used to be able to look up and I could see like a ring forming in the sky. And it was as if I was looking up and out at people like giants almost. And I could see they were discussing me. And it's like they were talking as if something was happening, but I don't know if I was meant to see it. But the weird thing is, during that time, is they began to then speak to me about something. And I remember seeing their faces as well, and they looked like doctors. They had things around their face. They're wearing these coats, very interesting looking. They looked neither male or female either. That's one thing I have to say. They didn't really have a gender, but I just knew they were beings. But anyway, during this time, I had a conversation with them. I can never tell you, Christi, what they said to me. It's like those memories were erased. All I knew that I spoke to these creatures. When I came back out of these trances, and sometimes they'd last about 5 minutes, I would come back feeling a bit better. It's like a weight had been lifted, and I don't know, I never questioned it too much early on, but I'd do that almost every lunchtime, just automatically, like it's like a switch turns on and I go and do my thing, come back. My friends just got used to it really, because they just thought, okay, well, he's off again, okay, we'll leave him to it. They'll come back, and they'd usually like throw grass in my face or throw mud at me, and I'll start throwing mud at them, just being a normal kid again, basically, like you do. But that moment, I just became no longer a kid and communicated with something and then came back again. So in a way, I feel like after the doctors at the hospital finished with me, I felt like the sky doctors were there to help me after, just to make sure that I spiritually, it's almost like they were trying to make sure that I stayed in my body then, basically. I think they were making sure that those fixings were secure too, because I think it went a bit too far out, basically, a bit too far to the edge. So all I knew that those things were benevolent, highly, highly intelligent. And I really wish I could impart what they told me, as well as what really frustrates me. I feel like there's some information locked away there that I'm not allowed to say. But hopefully I will one day, maybe like when my time comes at the end of this life, I'll be able to share those learnings. But for now, all I can say is I died, I came back, and I came back a better person. And I hope anybody that's listening to this just knows that your darkest day is just a day. There's always going to be a tomorrow. Live long enough to see the next day, and you'll be surprised what you may evolve into. It's amazing, really.
Well, and maybe that might be the subject of your next book.
Yeah, I started to work on the sequel to that. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah. So where can people find your book?
I'll share a link to you, Christi. You can pretty much find it anywhere, really. You can find it on Amazon, various global retailers. You'll be able to see it in US bookstores eventually, in the UK, Europe, and so on, though. But if you just Google search, excuse me for my very long name, Kieran Stanislaw Mace, as in Stanislav Mace, and then Paranormality, you'll see it come up, or at least begin to. But either way, I'll send you a link over and you'll be able to see where you would like to purchase that from, really.
Yeah. Generous. And then, but that it's available for pre-order now. I know it's not going to be out until, gosh, a ridiculously long time, like next spring, but it's
March. Yeah.
Yeah. It's available for pre-order now. And then where can we find the Paranormal Perspectives podcast?
It's a lot of places now, actually. Like our main driver is YouTube. So if you just simply search Paranormal Perspectives on YouTube, you should see it on there. We have a lovely theme tune. Most of it is just episodes talking about the most amazing subjects. We cover all sorts there. But yeah, you find us on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and probably some other places that I can't really think of at the moment, though. But whichever is your preferred platform, really. But I'd love for you guys to kind of contact me. And if you'd like to appear on future episodes, you're welcome to. And the whole point of this thing is it's giving people a chance, giving people a platform, really. Like I said, we're not here to judge you. I'm not here to make money from you. Because I personally, despite coming from Oxford, like, the land of education, I do believe that education should belong to everybody. It shouldn't be behind a paywall. So education could be through skill, through a knowledge of history, through certain truths. This is a truth that I believe everybody should have access to and judge for themselves what to do with, really. I'm never going to tell you what to think. You have every right and you're free. You have complete free will to decide on your evolution, really. So I hope you guys like it. And yes, let me know what you think as well, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. I need to know to evolve. But yeah, either way, it's unlike every other podcast out there. It's completely about appreciating the beauty of the paranormal. It's not just simply about boo, that's scary. It's a bit more to it that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Stan. You're a lovely host and an even lovelier guest. So I appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Christi. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your podcast.
Don't know what to watch next? Decisions. Well, we've got some suggestions. You can click this little video here and watch that. It's something that we think you're going to like. If you like the last one, you're going to like that one too. You can also click on the subscribe button. And if you do that, then you'll get notifications whenever we have a new video up. Win-win, right?